This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Calls are growing for the audio streaming app Spotify to remove Joe Rogan's podcast from its platform after he promoted misinformation about COVID-19 on his show and as video resurfaced showing Rogan making repeated racist comments. Last Friday, the Grammy-winning singer, India Arie, joined other artists who've pulled their music from Spotify as she shared a viral video showing Rogan using the N-word on his show 24 times.
You know,
saying the word.
You've already said is just like saying she's calling you a like this boy that he's a but starts calling them.
Other resurfaced videos show Joe Rogan saying black people have different brains and comparing a neighborhood with no white people to the Planet of the Apes. Rogan posted an apology video on his Instagram account last weekend in which he addressed the video supercut.
I'm making this video to talk about the most regretful and shameful thing that I've ever had to talk about publicly. There's a video that's out that's a compilation of me saying the N-word. It's a video that's made of clips taken out of context of me of 12 years of conversations on my podcast, and it's all smushed together, and it looks horrible, even to me. Now, I know that to most people, there's no context where a white person is ever allowed to say that word, never mind publicly on a podcast. And I agree with that now. I haven't said it in years.
In a video response Wednesday, India Arie said she thought some of Rogan's apology was disingenuous and added, Spotify's built on the back of the music streaming, so they take this money that's built from streaming and they pay this guy $100 million, but they pay us 0.003% of a penny, she said. Arie also cited writer Roxane Gay and others in clarifying she wanted Spotify to curate its content, not censor what it's on its platform.
Censorship is being at the threat of loss of life or freedom for your words. No one's being censored here. She said this is not censorship, this is about curation. Curation meaning choosing what you want in a space, choosing the space you want around you. Curation. This is not about censorship, this is about curation. And so Spotify is making a choice about the space they choose to curate. I and other creators are making choices about the space we want to curate. My conversation is not about Joe Rogan, it is not about Spotify, it is about my integrity and my dignity.
Spotify has now deleted scores of past episodes of Rogan's podcast, but Spotify CEO Daniel Ek has refused to cancel Rogan's exclusive contract. In a memo to Spotify workers, Ek wrote, quote, canceling voices is a slippery slope, unquote. The watchdog outlet Media Matters published a compilation of times Joe Rogan has spoken about the impunity he operates with at Spotify. This is a part of it.
Did they know that you're Jewish?
Yes.
Well, then they're.
You can't say that.
But I did.
Yeah, but you're not allowed.
But I'm on Spotify. You can get away with it. That's just because the world has gotten more controversial. Yeah. I've changed nothing, and Spotify's asked me to change nothing.
But
they've never
that's the
come
part,
to me.
Yeah.
They've
Kudos
never,
to them.
No, they've been amazing.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with them. Spotify has given me no pushback whatsoever. Spotify didn't seem, I mean, I had to take a chance, but they didn't seem like they were going to censor me in any way.
For more, we're joined by Alex Paterson, senior researcher for the LGBTQ program at Media Matters, and their self-described Joe Rogan watchdog. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Alex. You've said Rogan has 11 million listeners per episode. You've watched hundreds of episodes. I want to begin with the racism, with the N-word. And of course, that's also linked to COVID misinformation. But can you talk about what he has said over the years, the deal he made with Spotify? I mean, this goes way back. Spotify had to know what he was saying, what they were buying.
Absolutely. When Spotify cut Rogan a $100 million check to come on their platform exclusively, they knew what they were getting. And Rogan has delivered on that. He's continued to spread anti-trans hate, racist tropes, and sexist remarks on his podcast. I heard you play his apology video, but this week on his podcast, he said he was happy that that video came to light, and he called it a political hit job. He's made it clear that he doesn't have any intention of changing the lies and hate he spreads on his podcast. And it's far past time Spotify came to the plate and actually moderated the content on its platform.
So tell us a little more about Joe Rogan, for those who have never heard about him, how this whole story exploded.
Joe Rogan is a comedian and MMA commentator who rose to stardom in the United States, first through acting in comedy, then he was the host of Fear Factor, and now he has the most popular podcast in the world. He has 11 million listeners per episode, which is about 4 times as many viewers as broadcast cable TV news shows like Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson receive per night. So what Spotify has on its hands is a serial misinformer that's reaching a huge, huge audience. And he's not only spread hateful remarks on his podcast, but he regularly lies about the pandemic. Over the past year and a half, he's encouraged people not to get vaccinated, and he's repeatedly lied that mRNA vaccines are a form of gene therapy. And it's clear he's one of the most prominent COVID-19 misinformers in the US, and Spotify is completely failing to do anything about it.
You've reported that, as you said, that Rogan is one of the most prominent misinformers about COVID in the media landscape. In April, he said on his podcast he believes healthy 21-year-olds don't need to get vaccinated.
Yeah, safe to get vaccinated. I've said, yeah, I think for the most part it's safe to get vaccinated. I do. But if you're like 21 years old and you say to me, should I get vaccinated? I go, no. Yeah. Are you healthy? Are you a healthy person? Like, look, don't do anything stupid, but you should take care of yourself. You should, if you're a healthy person and you're exercising all the time and you're young and you're eating well, like, I don't think you need to worry about this.
Alex Paterson, your response.
The clip speaks for itself. This isn't a symptom of Joe Rogan's podcast. This is something he's doing almost every single day. He's also lied that President Biden perhaps didn't get vaccinated on live TV because he could have died. And he recently said that children don't need to get vaccinated. He's also pushed unproven and potentially dangerous treatments on his podcast. He was one person who made ivermectin pretty much a national debate overnight. And Spotify
explain what ivermectin is.
Yeah, ivermectin is a widely available prescription that people have started to take to try to treat COVID-19. But largely when you look at the research, there's no proven methods for it to treat COVID. And what's more, it can be taken in excess and have dangerous outcomes.
I want to go to a few days ago, January 25th, Joe Rogan hosting a Canadian conservative public figure, Jordan Peterson, on his podcast. Peterson spent almost an hour attempting to discredit climate science.
We still have a weird idea of nuclear because of the several, whether it's 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, there's been a few disasters.
Yeah, more people
Fukushima.
die every year from solar energy than die from nuclear.
Who dies from solar? Well, of course.
Guess how you die from solar?
Sunburn?
No, you fall off the roofs when you're installing it.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's gravity.
Right. Yeah, gravity. Yeah. And, that's a good example of unintended consequences.
Alex Paterson, if you can respond.
One thing I think that clip shows is that Rogan's episode at any point in time has the ability to become a lightning rod for right-wing misinformation. There we see clear lies about climate change. And also in that episode, Rogan and Peterson claimed that Michael Eric Dyson isn't actually black and spread other racist tropes. And what has Spotify done in response to that episode? Nothing. Potentially 11 million people took that directly and take it for truth. And what we're seeing is that this is repeatedly happening on Rogan's show. And I've listened to over 350 hours of his podcast in the last year, and we're just now seeing people take action against it. And until Spotify does something, I think we'll continue to see artists and content creators leave the platform.
Alex, let me ask you about Spotify saying they're keeping Rogan. They're not going to censor him. That's a slippery slope, the CEO X says. And also to repeat what India Ari, the musician, said, Spotify built on the back of the music streaming. So they take this money that's built from streaming and they pay this guy $100 million, but they pay us 0.003% of a penny?
It's simple. Money talks. And right now, Spotify is showing that above all else, it wants to profit off Joe Rogan's lies about the pandemic and his hateful bigotry. And it sends clearly a message to artists of who's most important here.
In 2020, you shared a clip from Rogan's podcast when he lied and claimed left-wing people, I think he put it as, were starting forest fires, which led to outrage that led to Rogan apologizing, but Spotify didn't take any action.
Yeah, CEO Spotify, Daniel Ek, has stood by Rogan time and time again. When Rogan lies about vaccines, when he spreads lies straight from Fox News. An additional point I want to make is that it's not just Rogan on the platform. Media Matters has identified an entire network of right-wing pundits and anti-vaccine skeptics who spread harmful misinformation on the podcast. Steven Crowder is one. He hosts a podcast that is played on Spotify, and he recently proposed ideas of Omicron parties. That episode is still on Spotify, despite the platform having rules that explicitly prohibit people from encouraging others to get infected with COVID-19.
You've said that Rogan evades accountability by inviting others on to voice them false or extremely discriminatory ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to point out he has a really cunning way of avoiding any accountability. When you look at Rogan's podcast, it's comedians, scientists, professors, and then a ton of right-wing and far-right pundits, people like Alex Jones, like Ben Shapiro. And Rogan knows what he's doing. He knows the sort of rhetoric these people are going to spread on his podcast. And then on the rare occasion he is actually held to account in the media, he has a really cunning way of avoiding any accountability. He claims to be a, quote, moron. And that's not true. He knows exactly what he's doing here. And both Rogan and Spotify know the influence he has.
What is Media Matters calling for?
We're calling for Spotify to publish and enforce robust rules around misinformation on its podcast, on its platform. If you look at Spotify's current platform rules, it makes two mentions of COVID-19. It doesn't say anything about masks, distancing, preventative measures, or downplaying the pandemic. And then in part of that, what I mentioned is Spotify has to actually enforce these rules. This week, Joe Rogan downplayed the severity of children being raped. He said it would be fine for 13-year-old boys to have sex with adult women. Spotify doesn't allow content that suggests it's okay to groom children for sex, but Spotify hasn't done anything in response. We're just really asking them to take accountability for the content that they're creating.